Okay, hello friends, and welcome to Discussions and Dragons. We're gonna have something a bit different for you tonight. I know, again. But as we've basically wrapped up Act One or the prologue area, etc., of the campaign, we're gonna have a little bit of a talkback session tonight where we're going to kind of discuss some things that have already gone on. I'm going to expand on a bit of lore that's mostly been hinted at, and the players will be free to ask me any questions about the settings, though there will be, I maintain the right to not answer any that may be deemed spoiled.
Fair.
So, yep. Tonight, for the moment, I have Bryn and Jay, who are normally Cameron and Oda,
Hello.
and Peach, who normally plays Gruff, but tonight will just be being himself, will be joining us shortly, and I will be monitoring and moderating this discussion. So tonight I am your Greg.
Wee.
Yeah.
Alright. What is cereal like in this setting? We're gonna have the cereal conversation someone else's goddamn D&D campaign. It's not gonna be
Fucking
mine.
It's probably mostly plain stuff like cornflakes.
That's fair.
And then any additional stuff is added, like you'll add some honey or some fruit with it.
It actually sounds really good right now. Not gonna lie. Well, that's fair.
cornflake time.
I like the prospect that there's cornflakes here. And also people from the year 1999, potentially.
Well, yeah, it's not exactly the year 1999 as it
Yeah.
would be in our world. Yeah, so we can start off with that as the lore expansion. We are almost at 2,000 years since the city was first founded. It is at this point, well, by next session, we'll be ending the first month and starting the second month, so that'll be 5 months till the new year.
Yeah.
But technologically wise, it is a lot more similar to like 30s, early turn of the century, with some other stuff mixed in. There are three main genres I am sort of fusing together to create this setting. And those are noir, cyberpunk, and dark fantasy.
Ah.
So there will be some things like the city is a mixture of technology, or rather a fusion of technology and magic. And across the multiverse, because the city is connected to the multiverse that's been established, that's where travelers come. Um, Crap, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying before? Because it's connected to the multiverse. Oh, there is a variety of the world. Some are more technology, some are more magic, some are fusion. But throughout the worlds, there isn't really as pure of a fusion as there is in the city, where it is full on a mix of like that 30s and in some cases almost future tech just working in harmony. You've got engineering and artificers and wizards all kind of working together. Help these.
Hello.
Hi,
What,
Pete.
what you've managed is something that very much feels like it's inspired by Eberron, but in all the good ways. Because my gripe with Eberron is a lot of people who like Eberron tend to want to power game and play
Oh,
with
I thought you said
crazy shit.
Enron.
No, Eberron. Like 'cause
Fun
that
fact:
was
I
always,
have
like,
never
my
played
tradition.
Eberron.
My experience with Eberron was I played with a 3.5 / Pathfinder group, and they were so beloved of Eberron, and every time they ran an Eberron campaign, I just would dip out very rapidly because it was just like high tech, lots of fucking magic items, have all of the magic items, do whatever you want, and I was just like, this isn't fun. And then I would talk to other people about Eberron, and they would talk about the same stuff, and I'm just sitting here like I like the idea of high power level, but I also like challenge. I do not like the fact that I am just handed like 80 magic items at the fucking gate in like half these campaigns. I don't know if that's just a fault on like DMs not understanding Eberron as a setting or what, but this is what when I was told what Eberron was, this is what I thought of immediately. I'll be honest with you.
Well, a lot of it is because I go with the urban style campaign for this. So there's other risks and other challenges that aren't combat, like social standing, getting in good with people. There's stuff you can spend your money on that's not equipment, like getting a workshop for Wisteria to build her stuff in, getting a bigger apartment, investing in a store, or Oda's criminal empire.
To be fair, a lot of DMs don't give those options, and I think that's kind of like a failure on just people not realizing they can do that.
I think the failure of most Eberron campaigns, and a lot of campaigns like it in general, is a lot of people like will, like Eberron, full power everything, and then just not structure their campaign around it. They'll just
I
like,
would like to point out, I generally do not DM D&D. I play the hell out of it, but my brain generally doesn't work towards creating stories in setting. So normally I DM a lot of mutants and masterminds. I've done quite a few M&M I already said D20 modern campaigns, and I've done some long-running freeform forum stuff. So this is like my first real attempt since like first putting on the DM hat back in high school, doing something in this D&D fantasy setting. So this is sort of doing like my normal setting, or my normal kind of story in that sort of D&D world and with that fantasy.
Honestly, it's fun and I actually really love it. And I look forward to learning about the setting and actually I kind of enjoy whatever is happening about 3/4 of the time. Though I wasn't prepared for I'm going to make a morally gray character. And everyone else decided they were also morally gray, but way, way more morally gray. And I'm just like, Cam,
Yeah, it is a very morally gray setting. I
yeah.
did like Cam was the only one of wealth. I did want at least one person of that kind of putting in that kind of
Yeah.
showing different parts. Because there are backsides to being of the family, of being in wealth, just as there are downsides to, being of the poor. You're better off, but you're not exactly free or doing great. There's a lot of constraints around societal pressure. Living up to the name.
A good way I kind of like to describe it is Cam is selfish, but he's not like, I'm going to go and steal everything selfish. He's more, these are the people that I like, and I will throw everyone else under the bus for them. Or, I have an easy way out. I will throw you under the bus for that.
Yeah. Well, Oda a lot is ambition, I'm seeing.
yeah,
Isn't
like,
there literally a game series called Nobunaga's Ambition or whatever?
yeah,
I know. That's why I keep saying it.
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm
Well,
glad
like,
we're all on the same page.
my idea with Nobunaga was always to kind of like unless another player put forth as the face, which I didn't really see happening after session 1, my idea was always to become the very much the fucking. You ever play Red Dead 2?
No, I have not.
Fucking, well, there's a guy, I forget his name, but there's this charismatic leader of like all the bandits in Red Dead 2 who's always got a plan, and he's like this big he's this silver-tongued, uh very smart, very wily professional criminal who's always got a plan and always has a way out of everything. And my intention was always to try to like bring the campaign towards that. And like if the campaign ended up wanting to be more Paragonish, like, follow the rules, let's explore the inner workings and stuff, I would definitely have explored a like going clean aspect of his plotline. But since everybody else seemed so okay with the idea of, yeah, let's just go ahead and go with this professional crime thing, and make it heroic, obviously, like, yes, but it's like it's altruistic professional crime. Like, you ever see Leverage? It's like that.
Well, another thing is that it's also like for Oda, I feel like a lot of it is like like in a noir, it's a justification. It's the story he tells. But he's at that age and that point where he's gonna bend some of that.
Yeah, like
he's gonna lose sight of his
yeah.
idea.
I feel like you can tell by the way like Oda talks about like his ideals and stuff like that. He's obviously like, sweetening the pot a bit,
And
like
on the other end, Wisteria is just like totally sold up and swept up in that, and like has seen that hardship and wants to make that change, and has lived on the right side of the law, but kind of been fucked over by it.
Yeah, like it's like the idea of where, like later down the line, I'm definitely going to have to like Nobunaga's going to have to reckon with this ideal of okay, well, I got these people in my hands, and we're at the point now where choices are going to have to be made. Whereas, do I reveal that my ambitions weren't as pure as they were initially? Do I try to make them as pure? Do I value my friendship with this person or these people over my goals? And I feel like
there's going to be some stuff you'll learn later too that'll spin your whole world on it.
Gruff's in a very similar place.
Yeah.
Gruff's really struggling to, because this was never part of Gruff's plan, but for Gruff, having been there before, it was easy to fall on old habits. I like the way that it started was just, a friend's in the jam, I'm going to do him a favor. And so, but now Gruff's in up to his eyeballs, and so it's like, even as a player, it's like sometimes it's not easy to determine. Okay, what would Gruff do?
Yeah.
I love the dynamic between Oda and Gruff in this campaign, because at a surface's glance, it kind of looks like, Oda is the charismatic leader and Gruff is the meathead henchman. But in reality, Gruff is often one of the key checks to Nobunaga, because Gruff has a very no-nonsense attitude. Gruff doesn't give a shit.
And Oda is very extravagant.
And like when Oda has a particularly harebrained scheme, I have a feeling like if that comes down the line, like, oh yeah, Oda's got, like, I have a plan, Arthur. I just need $10 trillion of a taxpayer stimulus, fucking shit like that. It's very much going to be, Gruff saying, hey, maybe don't, or I've got a better idea, let's just beat the shit out of them with baseball bats, or shit like that. It's like it's going to be a checks and balances system. It's like, in my head, Oda trusts Gruff like a right-hand man, in a way, because Gruff is both stronger than him and capable of doing things that he can't. But in a similar vein, Gruff also has his, like, because he didn't live the same way Oda did, he's definitely got his head closer to the ground when it comes to things like that. He's got his own pride and things like that. But Nobunaga was king, emperor, shogun. Like, he was a ruler. So obviously he sees things from a bit higher up of a perspective, and he might not see the things that Gruff sees, and I think he values that opinion.
I guess now.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
I guess now is quickly as good a time as any because I haven't mentioned it in the main chat. Cameron's being retired.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you wanted to talk about that after we finish talking Gruff.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I do want to talk about Gruff really quick because I think Gruff is absolutely fantastic because I was like, oh, we're just going to have a meathead character at the start of the campaign. And I'm like, oh no, we ended up with a little bit more than a meathead character. And I really like that because I like when people play fighters and barbarians with complicated things going on.
See, I'm going to
Because
disagree
no
with
one
you.
does.
We do have a meathead character. He's just not made of meat. Micahbot brings a lot to the table
Oh,
that I was afraid that Gruff was going to bring to the table, and it wouldn't be interesting. But Micahbot brings the comic relief we need so desperately in a setting like this in very
Yeah.
creative ways. Like, I don't know if Chev is watching this or if he'll watch it later, but I have to say,
oh yeah.
Chev's roleplay with Micahbot and the improvisation using the soundboard and sound effects and things is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It very
And-
much keeps things from getting too serious. He has a great sense of timing with that. And the fact that it comes from a place of innocence rather than dumbness
Yeah.
Yeah,
gives
it's
it
like
a different twist.
like
Naive
we've all seen the big stupid, orc with big fucking like axe or whatever the shit, and he's like, Hingus Dingus, I got my big sword, I'm gonna hit you with it. What? I can't hit this guy with a sword. Oh no, but that's my thing. Whereas, we've got, basically a hyper intelligent toddler that can summon bees on command. It's like
Yes.
it's like
It feels like a potential future problem we may have to deal with, but it's fine.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like
I kind of hope it becomes a problem. Michael Bot is interesting in that he is not human, and so I could see a couple of interesting things coming out because right now I think he's been a little bit adrift, just kind of floating on the wakes of all the other characters, but I'm sure eventually he's going to latch on to his own individual goals.
Yeah.
And I
We've been
would be delighted if some of those goals were awesome from a scientific perspective, but terrifying from a moral perspective.
yeah,
My-
no, that's
That'd
the
be
idea
cool.
that I'm thinking is with somebody so unshapen by the world caught up in this grand game that our characters are planning, how will Micahbot progress? Like, will he come to think of what we're doing as the norm? Will he come to think of it as being okay? And more importantly, will us being so loose with morality and law and things like that, what effect will that have on someone learning how the world works and is also an immortal robot that can summon bees on command?
You know
I
the character
do-
that I think about?
Hmm?
Do you guys remember David from Alien Covenant?
Well, before
Yeah,
we get too
yeah.
far away, I do want to talk a minute about Gruff. And
Gruff?
that'll actually, I can segue that into my. But whereas Oda and Wisteria, I feel, are the most noir style of the characters, or Oda being like the older criminal person and Wisteria being like the point of view neophyte getting caught up in this world. Gruff is really like the most dark fantasy with the whole like skirting both sides of the law, dealing with his like the rage of his ancestry while still trying to like fit in with society somehow.
Yeah, like
I really like that a lot.
Gruff has always felt like you mentioned, like when you said cyberpunky, I didn't think of it at first, but then I started thinking specifically about Gruff, and Gruff is a very cyberpunky character in this setting.
Yes. So is
Like-
Micah. Because
I mean,
robot.
like, yeah, but like cyberpunk doesn't have to be neon lights and vibro swords. It's just like it's more of a motif about like being dependent on society that is also oppressive, you know?
Yeah, it's entirely like very anti-capitalist at its core. and I will say that because it's something that I think people forget, is they get lost in the replacing parts of you is bad. No, replacing parts of you that are eventually going to be defunct or you have to pay Apple to use is bad.
I'm just imagining like a fucking Apple pacemaker. You
An
gotta
Apple
get a new
TV.
one every year.
If you miss a
Listen to
payment, it
God.
fucking turns off.
No, if you
That's
miss
the
a payment,
bit.
it'll skip a beat every now and then just to keep you on your toes.
Well,
So
yeah, that's,
now we're in Repo the Genetic Opera.
Oh man,
I
I
mean,
wanted to like
that's-
repo so bad. A buddy of mine like
I
talked it
enjoyed
up, and thing, but I just have such a problem with gore that I just can't handle it.
Oh no, I love the hell out of that.
Yeah.
You don't have that problem.
You know, as
Same.
much as I talk a huge game about loving the Saw movies, I can't do gore.
we were watching, for a quick context, we were watching John Wick 2 the other night, and there are some scenes in it that are a little rough and involve eye gore and things like that, and we had to have like a moment of warning, this is coming. And I don't
Yeah.
mind accommodating because I understand there's some stuff, like I'm not big on like hand trauma,
I had problems with John Wick 2 compared to the first one. It was like
but yeah.
John is too
Well,
invincible in 2.
well, let's bring
let's get back
things
on
over to
topic, yeah.
Cam or Cam's replacement for a minute. Because
So-
yes, Cam, you heard it here first, folks. Cam's being retired and replaced.
To be fair, that doesn't mean Cam isn't going to come back as an NPC. That is a totally open option that I'm up for, because I think that'd be funny.
Oh, it can happen. It's
But-
set up to make that possible.
But there's a very real realization that as I look at it, Cam pulls too far the opposite way of the party's goals or interests, and it makes me feel like a drag and not fun to play. It's why I kind of got really quiet in that last campaign, because I started to that last session, because I started to realize, hey, wait a minute, I feel like I'm becoming a 2-ton weight to this group's dynamic. Hold the fuck on. And it's like, yes, you want somebody who's a little bit more morally light to be in your party, but arguably Wisteria fulfills that goal pretty well. She's
Yeah.
willing to do bad things, but she is morally good to a certain point. So it's like, okay, I need someone
She
who's
definitely puts others above herself, and that is the main purpose of her goals, even if some people get hurt or some compromises get away.
because Cam would have more than likely absolutely, considering he hasn't known you guys as long and everything, thrown you guys under the bus for his friend who is having a drug problem, and that has its own like moral stuff tied to it. But there's a very
I'd like to see
reality-
that play out, though. I'd be really interested to see, if that's true to your character, I would not mind watching a character turn on the group and then just let the chips land where they may.
True,
Like
but,
it's something you don't see a lot in these types of stories where like you've got the morally good or kind of morally grayish character who like is drawn into the criminal underworld via a moment of desperation and is like told, this is for the greater good, the society's out to get us, you'll see the truth when you'll see it once we're in there. And then once they're in it, they don't go in
aggressively. I will like do stuff and everything, and I'm not opposed to the idea as a DM of that kind of thing happening, but at the same time it's a matter of like, this is the kind of thing that leads to PvP, and I'm very much a
There's
not
a point where it's too
that.
far.
Yeah.
but I like the potential we've laid though, where we've got the new character coming in, and I know a lot about the new character. I helped design them, but we have this phenomenal point where Cameron gets out because he's got moral quandaries with everything. Like he doesn't feel good about it and everything, and but we've got this character, this group who's trying to upend society. And we could definitely play it as there could just be a point where Cameron is just like, no, this is going too far. Like Oda will let him go out of respect and be like, okay, we're square. You can go.
Because
And
Cam benefits from society as it is as well.
Yeah.
yeah, but like
Oh,
Oda,
so sure that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say like there'll definitely just be a point where Cameron could just be like, no, and he sells Oda and the group out with the insider knowledge he has from before.
Mhm.
And perhaps we have to fight Cameron in some kind of like final fight, and we have this like tense moment where like we've got a character that we were friends with in the past that we now have
There's
to
a
deal with as an enemy.
possibility for that once they become an NPC.
Yeah.
Lepage, why don't you say what you're gonna say, and then
I was
Right.
gonna say I wouldn't be so sure that everybody's on board with reshaping the city. I mean, the interesting thing about Cameron and Oda is they play two extreme poles for characters who are in the middle. Like Wisteria is definitely in the middle. Gruff is certainly not as extreme in terms of ambition and goals as Oda is, and so it kind of puts it kind of
but
adds to a spectrum.
to a point, but it also boils down less to good and bad and more to status quo and change between Cam and Oda. And that's a bit of a different kind of thing that can be a bit uncomfortable and tricky to discuss.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what Pete is saying though. I do think that like Gruff is definitely in the scenario where, okay, right now what Oda's saying and doing benefits me a good deal, but he's also the kind of person where no matter if I trust Oda, no matter if Oda trusts me, he's keeping his options flexible, and it's pretty clear that he's trying to keep Oda at arm's length in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's trying to be like if I need to dip, I've got connections in the city.
But that's like a pragmatic character, and that's a little different than someone who's like out and out opposed for some reason still going with the plan.
Yeah.
But
So,
I did want to ask Bryn if, since we're retiring Cam, and we can share this as a little bit of bonus information for whoever wants to tune into this semi-inconsequential episode, if you'd like to hear the revelation that Cam was going to receive at some point. Their special secret history, Gruff has already gotten his.
Sure.
All right, so Cam, there is actually a reason that Cam can't do magic, because Wizards generally doesn't have anything to do with any natural ability or mana stores or whatever you want to talk about. It's usually just following a series of directions, like cooking.
Yeah.
And even if you have talent as a cook, you're at least either going to be able to make a couple simple dishes, cantrips, or some kind of reaction, lighting something on fire. But for Cam, it's more like the stove won't turn on at all, and that's just for him. So something that was going to happen during the side history story, the past is backstory, Roger was going to get shot and killed with an arrow. Martha Ratarats, Cameron's mom, if I don't say her name often enough, is going to touch that brooch, emerald brooch around her neck that I mentioned in that first one, and say the words, "I'll give you whatever you want. Just bring my Roger back." And there was going to be a big green flame on the video. It's going to be revealed later. Cameron's mom knew all along that Cameron could not do magic. And that was the deal. Because wizardry didn't work like that. But different people had potential and bits of things. This is kind of going into how, like, deities and to an extent the Fae are sort of living stories. So Cam had within him the potential of a great wizard. Like this kind of story, this ability behind, or the ability to get the ability to be one of the greatest in generations. So that was given to an archfey in exchange for his father's life. But because that deal was made with Cameron's mother, the archfey left something behind. A tiny bit of power, a piece of an archetype, a kind of story, a type of god or demigod, a piece of the trickster. And that is where that subconscious arcane trickster stuff was coming from, that you would later be able to focus on some other cool, unique stuff.
Okay. See, that makes it way more curious that I was like, okay, I don't want to like, you know, I don't want to rip apart the combat dynamic too hard, and I already have another rogue that I can play, and I like playing rogues. That I have a second arcane trickster, which
Damn, I
means
could have kept using that one.
that's fine. You can still use it. You know how I am.
Yeah. Well, now I've
Yeah.
said it on air, so the viewers.
Oh yeah, but no, I think this other character should just have the magic, especially given their dynamic with Cam that I helped Bryn establish. I think them just having it inherently helps that dynamic out.
But they just haven't practiced it to the point of becoming a wizard, so it just helps with their
Yeah, no,
sneak
it's like they didn't feel they need to because they had the natural talent in a sense.
And that's also kind of Lucian, who is very brilliant and powerful, and owns a couple patents, which is how he can leave his hedonistic lifestyle, which is Cameron's uncle and the father of this new character.
Yeah.
He is the same. He uses his magic just to be lazy. He's carried around by unseen servants. He eats literally with a mage hand.
To be fair, in Fox's case, because I'm just gonna drop that because it's not a big deal. It's gonna come up to, like next week, hopefully.
Do you want to talk about Fox a little bit?
A little. It's more over a matter of like they're cousins. Fox is the older cousin, in all honesty. I went with older because I think it fits a little bit better, especially considering I came up with a fun reason why they would be willing to change things. Even though technically if they get in good graces with their family, they benefit from the status quo. But I digress, and I'll talk about that in DMs probably later. But they've got like a history familially of Fox got in bad graces because Fox embraced the problems that they come with. Because they're actually a criminal. They actively know what the fuck they're doing. But when they were younger, Cam learned to pick locks by watching them. Cam learned to do maybe questionable things because of them, and also the natural instinct. But I came up with the first lock he learned to pick came from them because they picked a lock because they were like, no, come on, we're gonna go look at something we're not supposed to look at.
Awesome.
Like, you are 10 years old. I'm gonna show you the cool thing my dad has that we're not supposed to see. You know, that older, like, bad cousin kind of vibe.
Oh yes, I am very familiar.
But yeah. They for the most part, I look at them and they're actively like a proper thief. They're the kind of person who they just kind of embraced the reality of crime. But they also kind of have at least a little concern for Cam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're the one who offers to, like, basically replace him.
All right. Paige, you want to talk about Gruff? Oh, are you not done? Okay. All right. Paige, do you want to talk a little about Gruff's revelation and any reactions you had with learning that?
Yeah. I think Gruff's revelation was wasn't it made
Who his
on
mama
air?
was. Yeah, who his mama was. That his mother was actually the daughter of this elven crime lord, mafia boss. And Silvus is
And Uncle Silvus.
Yep.
Yeah. And it definitely puts Gruff at a bit of a quandary because now he's got Silvus that he's associated with forever, but has always just been kind of an arm's length business associate. And there's, not really a reason to think that they're ever going to go fishing together or anything like that. It's just not the kind of relationship. And then there's this, upright father that Gruff's been like. The whole reason he entered the guild in the first place was to try to make amends for what he'd done and all this other stuff. And so, yeah, it is definitely put Gruff in somewhat of a catch-22.
And I thrive on putting you in difficult situations because I'm a true legal man.
Yeah, well, you definitely outdid yourself. And so I think this is one of those things where, I don't know, as a player, it's going to be very, very difficult to.
Crawford the First is going to have a little more to say, where I won't go into the specifics, but he's basically, what they were telling you before is just go your own way. You don't need to be.
Yeah, I was like, all right, let's get some help from the ancestors. What would an old school caverns dweller orc do? And they're all like, just do whatever you feel. And he's like, okay, that was helpful. Thanks, guys.
I wasn't
Click.
trying. That was my failure at expressing that they were mostly being like, what is the blood, the family now? Just, be who you are and fuck everybody else. You're an orc. You're strong, you're tough, and you will fuck up anyone who doesn't like how you live your life. That's how an orc is.
Yeah, and that's what makes. I think that's what makes. If you could describe Gruff with one word, it'd probably be duality. His astral sign would definitely be Gemini, because he's like, he's half orc, half elf. Hated and feared by anybody smaller than him, and dismissed by anybody who's bigger than him. And to put the cherry on top, so to speak, he is now facing an invitation from the elvish side of his family. Something. He's definitely put his orcish foot forward through most of his life. And so now he's got this, entrance into the elven mob. And so, yeah, this is.
And Oda even presents a third option where, you have your elven family and that elven mob and the elven criminal. And then you have your dad, Ulfin, and you've got the upright citizen defending the city, guardsmen. But then you've got this almost kind of criminal, but also almost revolutionary sort of thing in a found family situation. It's you got these three different kind of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it'll be real interesting to see how that plays out.
I agree. About every 10 minutes since that revelation's been made, I've been thinking, okay, what would Gruff do in that situation? It's not been an easy question to answer.
Yeah, I've been holding on to that one for a while. That was the first one I came up with.
Oh my gosh, and that's such an irony because I created Sylvis.
Mm-hmm. When I saw that you were half elven and half orc, when it's usually half orc, half human, and that you had that elven mafia in there, I'm like, oh, that's free real estate.
So one of my older characters, Peach knows about Violet. Violet, who's in the Solstice campaign, the joke for her is she's a half elf, but they didn't tell you what the other half was. So she's a draconic sorcerer. And that's the bit. They don't tell you what the other half of the half elf is. That's what the other half was. And she's a fire sorceress in a family full of water specialists. Except that she can use her fire abilities to put fires out, and she's actually really she's incredibly intelligent, and she's also 15. I like
Yeah,
child
she's a fun
characters in
character.
D&D.
There were a lot of fun characters in that campaign. I can't help but feeling that Audubon may have fit better in the city than he ever
Oh,
did
yeah.
in the Solstice campaign.
That would be a very funny thing, is if we just get Greg and Shiv to talk, and then it just turns out Audubon gets fucking, like, is about to get executed and just gets whisked away to the city.
I mean, that's kind of the thing. You guys, don't, and you may not even find out how or why, but it is connected to everywhere. So that was to let people, like, as long as we're not breaking any copyright, you could do things like a historical character or something similar to an intellectual property,
Like,
or
full disclosure, originally my depiction of Oda was going to be much more based on a story that I like a lot. There's a manga called Drifters, where various historical figures are brought to this limbo after death. And there's like two factions. Like one is people who there's like two factions of people who died. Like there's this common factor of like everybody who died seems to have been betrayed. And there's some that are vengeful of it and some that don't give a shit. And the more vengeful group of people are people like, Joan of Arc and other people. And like the leader is implied to be Jesus, but it isn't mentioned, at least as far as I read. But one of the core like protagonists is Oda Nobunaga, but he's like this gruff eye patch wearing asshole. And originally I was going to go much more into that degree of like, oh yes, he's this eye patch wearing, booze drinking, gun shooting, dickhead asshole moron who just wants to get out of here more than anything. But then I started playing as him more, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's just lazy and boring. Let's see where we can take this character.
Oh no, I'm definitely loving the way everyone is shaping up. All you guys here, and I hope they're listening. At least they listen at least later, long enough to hear their praises. Wisteria and Michael have both been awesome. We have a great party and some great players that is turned into a really cool story. Does anyone have any lore or setting questions? Kind of talk about players for a bit. Then we were kind of trying not to be too late.
My questions about the lore are questions that I don't really want answered in this way, if that makes sense. It's like I wonder things about the lore, but I would rather be like, okay, I'm curious about this, but it's something that'll probably come up in the narrative anyway, so why ask it now when it's something that can surprise me later?
Fair.
Because I love being surprised by the city, because it's just such a strange setting that I enjoy so much.
We have established that there are newspapers.
In my head, they're the Harry Potter newspapers with the moving pictures.
I hadn't really figured too heavily on the visuals. That does work very well.
Yeah.
Though I have been operating off that picture is more difficult than sound, which is why magic mirrors are rarer and more expensive.
How hard is it to make a magical GIF?
Well, okay, so you'd probably have to hand paint every frame of it, so that's how expensive. So you need to get to the point of the printing press. We're in the 1930s, so we have one. So it'd be cheaper, but it'd still be a lot.
The printing press is established, and like it's a magical printing press.
Yes.
So like, I think it's doable.
And we briefly touched and mentioned that there are newscasters, there is radio news, there are audio dramas, like in the 30s that was mentioned briefly at one point in passing.
So we have audio dramas and things like that, probably. We haven't quite gotten to TV, but we're getting there. I want to know how they figure out the whole tube system and like because I know the story of how the TV was figured out. It was some dude farming, and he realized like how he was like cutting down crops and everything could make a picture, and just kind of figured it out from there. And it's like, oh, okay.
Well,
I have to wonder how that occurs.
They do have the remote viewing mirrors, but they're just rare and super expensive. They're mostly seen in businesses, but those are used for like, watching sports.
Yeah,
Um,
but they're probably really fuzzy and weird, I imagine.
yeah. It's not the best picture. You guys did watch them on the episode 2, The Party Goes to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Episode 2, The Party Goes to Buffalo Wild Wings is a good name for an episode.
This whole campaign is the sick and twisted, always sunny season you didn't know you needed.
Yeah. No, it's been a lot of fun. We've been bouncing. I got a lot of good themes. Story's been watching up well. I think we've talked about the government off air.
Yeah, we
So,
have. But no, the government would be a really good thing to go into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's summarize that for our listeners. So, as you've seen in the map and all that, the city split up into districts. Each district has
PJ, you're buzzing. You're buzzing like the bee.
yeah.
I mean, please continue.
So they so each each district is ruled by a counselor. And this counselor is sort of like a mayor and like a senator, where they kind of rule over their specific council seat. And they're supposed to, with the decisions of the council, with decisions within just the district, to be like all people of voting age in the district, but that kind of varies and happens less frequently further out from the center. There's some places that are basically, they just kind of bought their counselorship, especially places like Cathedral Village, and they're just kind of like a baron of this little area. But they all sit on the council, each of these counselors, plus a representative of the City Guard, the Arcane University, and the Adventurers Guild. A representative of the Church of Light sits on the meetings and can address the council at any time, but does not get a vote. And finally, there is a mayor who is much more similar to a president. He's kind of like an executive branch.
And I was so hoping that like the big leader would just be called the mayor, like no like grand title. He's just the mayor. That's so bad, and if it wasn't the case, I was gonna bring it up. I'm so glad that we were on the same wavelength.
Yes.
Because that's so noir cyberpunky for like the leader of like an establishment to just have like a one-word title like the director or the mayor or
It was the bard of the first 5 who was the original mayor, by the way. The 5 founders. Because of course the bard goes into politics.
Yeah. Or the governor. Shout out to The Walking Dead.
So other than the City Guard, are there and the Adventurers Guild, which the Adventurers Guild acquires things, the City Guard keeps peace. Are there any other agencies?
Well, the Adventurers Guild does do more than just find things. Of the guild itself, that is essentially what it does, but as you guys go up in rank, and it's a 4-tier rank system, the kind of things you guys can do can change. So right now you guys are rank C. And that's the lowest rank, and basically all you get is access to the caverns and basic perks. So you can go down there and retrieve those resources, and you get your health insurance. They'll provide you with lawyers, and you get paid. You get your 1 month to stay there. And then when you go to rank B, you get access to basically like a bounty board, and you can act within the city as sort of like a mercenary. At this point, you don't even need to operate out of the guild hall. You can get an office and do that. You still can go down into the caverns. And most people don't go above C. it's really a lot more like ambitious or people who have specific skills. There are different specializations. Like there are some people who are just like hunters who go down there into the caverns and somehow manage to find food animals every time, but that's what their main thing they're doing. And other things like that. But at rank C at rank B you're basically for hire. So you can do a lot more of those regular settings in that urban setting. And at B, you can do bounties for the city guard, and A, you just get a whole bunch more perks. No, sorry, at A, you can do bounties, and at S rank, you get a whole bunch more perks, which I haven't figured out.
That is like the one minute fear that I have about the campaign, in my opinion, is like it's like the one fear I have is that, like, yes, I love the story where it's going right now, but I'm afraid of it just getting away from this like cavern exploration aspect.
I mean, you can keep up with it. It's designed
Yeah.
so you can have the option of you can keep the caverns. That's always going to be a good source of income. But like once you're rank B, like you want to get influence or get in with people. You want to do stuff for rich people, and there can even be jobs you can take that are still in the cavern. Like the university might hire you to bring some instruments down there, or do some other kind of
Yeah,
experiment.
like a trumpet.
It would make sense to me that rank B, rank A, and rank S would be very, very dangerous,
Yeah,
especially for our group, because if we're planning on using the guild for the to carry out, for criminal enterprise purposes, well, I mean, where something's done once, it's been done before, and so I would expect that the Syndicate, the Red Queen, the and whatever other criminal enterprises are in the city would also have similarly positioned personnel, and would probably use that for acquisition, assassination, or if there isn't any, if that hasn't happened, then it would make sense that there's a reason that hasn't happened, like extreme vetting as you go up through the ranks, or something. It either, if it's easy, everybody'd be doing it. If it's not easy,
well, that's the one thing, is that it's not easy. Is that it is basically the most dangerous job, but it's extremely high paying. So one, it attracts the desperate or those in difficult situations, and two, it's usually lucrative enough that it's just easier just to do that and make money, that any tempting offers aren't as tempting. They have some issues with like smuggling and like getting stuff like not going into the Adventurers Guild, but instead going directly to some other people for a little extra. But that's not going to be their entire haul. They try to do that, and the dwarven mob, which I'm still working on a name for.
please make sure to read about Whitey Bulger and a few of the other Irish.
I am from Boston, sir.
Okay, there we go. Oh, come on, it wasn't that funny. How was I to know he was from Boston?
Fucking, you couldn't
I
tell?
don't have the accent.
He has no accent.
He actually has a
I-
little bit of one. I've
it's
known people who were
pronunciation.
I've known people who were from Boston basically my whole life. One of my oldest friends was from Boston.
Even if
Before
you
I stopped
lose-
talking to him due to reasons. But
If you
Yeah.
lose the accent, there's still like pronunciation quirks that tend to stick with accents. Like I have a Canadian accent because most of my family comes from Canada, mostly Vancouver, and I grew up watching Canadian comedy, which mostly is filmed in Vancouver. So I
Yeah.
have the Vancouver accent, even though I'm not from Vancouver.
and I have a
There's-
profoundly fucked up accent that is like half Southern, half Midwest
Mm.
dipshit.
Like there's usually a pronunciation difference in the vowels between Greg and Craig. Because of my accent, I don't have that.
Yeah.
So people get confused all the time, and I have to be like with a G. And I just
Anyway.
say words that's stuck on like butter.
Oh.
Oh, Peach just fucking died.
hope I didn't
Anyway,
piss him
dies.
off.
Dude.
I hope I didn't annoy him with that. I didn't mean to be.
He probably just lagged out or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very considerate of whatever monster that killed him to disconnect him from the Discord call.
You know, family's all from Canada. Mom's side's from Quebec. Dad's side's from Vancouver. Grew up watching Canadian comedy. Also, I'm from Florida, which is way more confusing. I was born in Florida. That's why I got a little accent sometimes.
You good? We just heard, and you disconnected.
Yeah, no, I didn't die. I was saying that the same way I think we all, or almost all, have elves pegged as corollaries to Mediterranean peoples. I've got a very strong Atlantic impression of dwarves for some reason. Like,
Oh yeah, we're going with that.
Scottish.
You were in a pub that was dwarven owned. That Buffalo Wild Wings, that pub that is owned by dwarves. So I've already been running on that. I've been doing that like that. Don't expect me to do a Celtic accent. I can only do an Irish accent when I'm singing. I can't do it when I'm speaking.
That's fair.
Oh, Danny boy.
Last night as I lay dreaming of pleasant
The
days.
elf Mediterranean is a little funny from just the perspective of Cam's last name is like a Mohawk name.
Yeah. I mean, that just also kind of like came out of like you had to pull that out of your ass.
So
Yeah,
the
you
only
did.
thing I did was go to like native people, like my own people. Wait a minute, because Fox was the origin of that last name, and like
Yeah, I was gonna say, honey, don't pretend like you didn't just pull the last name of another OC out of your ass.
shush. Their name means hunter, but in a masculine form. It's usually a term it can be a name, but it's also like a term associated specifically with hunting party communication. There are built-in like NB pronouns, but I only knew that word through masculine pronouns, so I didn't learn that until later.
You know what's funny is the character you're bringing in, by complete accident at the same time, because the character Bryn's bringing in is based on a different OC from a different project we both had a hand in. And I was creating a character for the Heroes of Our Time campaign based on the same character separately, and had to drastically rework them once I learned that Fox was coming to City.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun to see.
Oh yeah.
We were gonna keep this a little shorter than usual. I'm not sure if anyone else had.
If you guys want to call it now, that's totally fine.
Well, does anyone else have anything they want to discuss?
I don't.
I'm good.
Yeah,
We were talking about. Yeah, you were asking about the corruption in the guild. I kind of answered that a bit. We went over a little about the Celtic dwarves. But if there's nothing else, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us tonight on something a little different, a little extra something, and not what you were expecting, but hopefully you still enjoyed. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you all have a wonderful night. And if all goes well, we should be back to our regularly scheduled program next week.
Awesome. All right. Have a good night, you guys.
Later.
Good night.